Hello and welcome to ICF and NewsClick. Today we're in conversation with Orijit Sen, an artist who's not only been a long-standing friend of the ICF, but has also introduced a fierce dimension to the genre of resistance arts. Hello.
Hi.
What is your idea behind using laughter as a tool to weaponize political scathing commentary?
At some level, my work it uses humor and satire and poking fun as a method. It's actually a kind of a form of distilled anger. When I come across something like that really troubles me, I feel kind of paralyzed. I feel I can't get down to doing what I was supposed to be doing till I deal with this sense of frustration or anger or hopelessness sometimes. So I have to do something. I have to get it out of my system. So a lot of work actually comes out of that response to that sense of being helpless and frustrated. The other thing is that because it's often like that, especially I'm talking of the things I put out on social media, I always have a limited amount of time. I can't spend hours thinking it over and figuring out what I want to do. And I have to find the right tools and images and metaphors to express that powerfully. And to my mind, in a way, the visual language that I've been using on social media, it kind of is different from my regular or my other work, which is actually very deliberate, very thought through. Right. I spend a lot of time researching stuff. I do versions and I iterations. But with what I put out on social media, it's quite immediate. I try to find an image that expresses that feeling that I'm feeling. Humor is very powerful. It's a very powerful way to channelize anger. Sometimes I feel scared when I'm putting it out because I feel like, what am I doing? Am I going to get into trouble? Really? But I can't, I have to put that thought out and I just post it. When I posted it, then I feel a kind of, okay, that's out of the way. Now let me get down to my work. So often happens like that, yeah.
Do you think that this anger, the aspect of anger itself that we all feel that there's always simmering that does not really get spoken about much, or we don't address it, that how do you also respond to this concept of rage itself that is driving political engagement?
I think it's important for us to find creative ways to channelize the rage because I see a lot of, from every side of the political or even so-called apolitical spectrum, there's a lot to be frustrated about. But the fact is that most people feel frustrated, a lot of people feel frustrated and unable to express that frustration with their lives. Kind of keeps getting pent up and building up. And I think a lot of violence and hate and bigotry, all of this is actually expressions of that deeper frustration that is not dealt with, that keeps simmering and building and becomes something hard inside. And you want to find someone to blame for your condition, right? So that's where all the bigotry and hatred comes from.
But a lot of your cartoons particularly do ridicule right-wing figures and are anti-establishment, they're anti-orthodoxy. So there is an individual position that one can take as an artist on issues. But do you also see yourself and somewhere your identity as a way to be aware of where you're situated? Because these questions of speaking for the disenfranchised and where you're speaking from and all of that are things that as artists we have to regularly, we are now in a climate that involves that kind of conscious dialogue. How do you engage in that position?
And I get trolled for this a lot by obviously Bhakt and Sangees who accuse me of being a congressy or a secularist or whatever, because in their vocabulary only these two exist. Well, the fact is that ever since I started my professional practice or I came out of my design school, I have been engaging. I mean, my work, River of Stories, is actually a very long anti-government and anti-development book. BJP was, well, 92 when I was working on, I was doing my research for River of Stories. Advani's Rath Yatra passed through Madhya Pradesh, the Narmada area where I was doing my research. Well, so that was that far back, even before the demolition.
Right.
BJP was not even something that existed in anybody's mind. My first kind of sense of dismay or feeling of sort of opposition to the status quo and the norms that we lived within was sharpened when I was a student in 1984 after the Sikh killing. So I would say my sense of anti-authoritarianism is really the core of it. That comes from perhaps my earliest recollection of it is in school and in high school. I was a kind of rebellious teenager. I don't know why, for whatever reason. And I used to get into trouble with my teachers a lot. When you get into, you're that kind of a kid and you challenge your teachers, they don't like it, and they can get back at you in various ways. Okay, so I learned those lessons early, that authority is never fair, and people who are put in authority are given that position and are painted to, we are supposed to respect our teachers. You swallow that bit and you say, yes, teachers know more than us, we should respect them, we have to learn from them. But when you challenge them and confront them and you feel the impact of their vindictiveness, for example, you realize that this story, there's a scam going on here. Today's situation with right-wing governments in India and elsewhere, and to me, the government is one part of it, but the majoritarianism that's going on right now, which the governments are, kind of facilitating, is something to be resisted with all one's might. So we should all be bad children. We should all oppose the consensus of the majority, and we should all place ourselves outside of it.
Since you mentioned River of Stories, I was also thinking that it has been a long process to get comic books to be viewed and graphic novels to be viewed the way that they are now. I mean, today you have Joe Sacco and all of them, and you have it as a serious form of journalism. And now maybe with also this massive industry, mainly out of America, that is churning out all these comic book figures, it becomes the response, the interaction with it has changed, but you have seen a very different part of it, and is there something that you would like to talk about, how you've viewed these changes, for the different ways that this has changed, how people's response to the comic medium and to the graphic medium have changed?
When we were growing up, my father was a cartographer and used to be transferred from place to place. So in small towns mostly, I don't think I saw TV till I was like in college or something. So comics were the only form of visual storytelling that we kids could have access to, and comics were much looked down upon, except Amar Chitra Katha, because they told stories of Hindu mythology. That was the only one that parents and teachers were okay with us reading, but we actually really we were more interested in the Phantoms and the Mandrake and whatever else. My friends and I, we used to have, my brothers bought from pocket money our own collections of comics. And it was obviously one of those, whose collection is better, and I got this, and we would swap, of course, because we want to read each other's comics. So swapping was a big thing, and we would agree to swap sometimes it would be like one big Mandrake comic for 2 Amar Chitra Kathas, and there was a whole kind of. I used to love to draw. I used to draw all the time as a kid. So sooner or later, I tried making my own small comic stories, and I tried exchanging them with my friends for, like I draw one page and I say, can you give me a phantom for that? And to my surprise, some friends actually agreed to do that. So that gave me a sense like, okay, my comics are worth something. I mean, people are actually willing to exchange proper phantoms for my stuff. And that's got me going making comics. Of course, I mean, there were always just small things. I mean, I didn't have the time or the thinking to make larger stuff, but I was always copying stuff. I was always trying to. Tintin was a huge influence. When Tintin came in, I mean, we were slightly older then. And Tintin completely blew my mind. I feel like when I read Tintin, I'm kind of entered into that space. I'm there in the desert with Tintin or whatever. And that power of that medium kind of totally enthralled me, and that's what I want to keep drawing my own comics. And then when I went to design school, my teachers and all thought this obsession with comics is a bit weird. But at the same time, in the NID, my design school library, they had fantastic European comics. I came across those and I was like, wow, I mean, there's all kind of comics artists out there doing amazing work. And then Art Spiegelman's House came out. And of course, that was a big thing. It won the Pulitzer Prize and people were talking about it. It was on the cover of Time magazine. Which is all happening in my school library, right? I have access to Time magazine in the same place, and I'm telling my teachers, you guys don't know, but you know, this is what I'm talking about.
I mean, like you mentioned Tintin, which also comes with its own sets of problems. Like, especially the way that Tintin addresses race is hugely problematic. And so, also with your journey with engaging with the comic medium, have you responded to? I mean, whether you grew up with Phantom Comics, you grew up with Tintin, but then you also look at something like Mouse, which is extremely subversive, and realized that the medium itself has a mainstream and a periphery, and where were the problems within that medium, and how did what was the time when you started noticing what was wrong with even what you were reading within the comic medium, and whom did you move towards from there?
When I started reading stuff like Mouse, I came across one artist who influenced me a lot from the same time is Robert Crumb. If you read Robert Crumb, there's no way you don't see what's wrong with all the other stuff, right? We grew up, of course, reading not just in comics, but books and literature, movies, everything was racist or Orientalist at the best. So the point is that you can love something, but you can go beyond it and look at it from a new perspective. And if you are an intelligent, growing human being, you will. I used to read, let's say, anything, I mean, a Beagle. Always, if there was an Asian character or an Arab in a Beagle story, we knew already that he is going to be a problem. He's going to do something, he's going to steal something, he's going to betray someone, or at best, if he doesn't do any of that, he will just die like a faithful guy. Yeah. So,
Also like the Commando comics.
exactly. And what were we as kids thinking at that time? We were identifying obviously with the white heroes, right? I was Biggle, so I was whoever. And what did I think of this brown guy in the story? Because I also know that I am that brown guy.
Right.
I think you can carry you can carry these contradictions. It didn't trouble us. We might have found it funny sometimes, actually found it funny. You can't help notice even as a kid that some of these characterizations are sort of so stupid. But as you grow up, it's easy to see those things. I mean, you don't forget those things. And the moment you have the right kind of context through a new lens through which to see it, you're able to understand and deconstruct that stuff. I think the problem that happens is that as we grow up, many of us read, well, now comics is not a big deal, but we see TV shows, we see whatever, Netflix or whatever. We grow up with that internalization, the same that we had, but now what happens, or rather happens, not all of us have access to Robert Crumb and Art Spiegelman or whoever the equivalent figures are. So we are not provided those lenses. We continue to see the world through the same lenses. We are not provided those alternative ways of looking. So I think that role of artists who provide that alternative view, who help you to see as you grow up that what's wrong with the status quo, what's wrong with things around you, that's so critical. Because people ask me, does art really change anything? I'm like, art changes everything. Because the changes that art makes is in your head. And that is the biggest, most powerful thing.
Yeah, right.
You know, maybe art cannot feed a hungry person on the street right now, but art can change society in a much larger and longer time span, so that there will be no hungry people in the street in the future.
Because we're talking about a contradictory space and inhabiting a world that is full of contradictions, I want to talk about platforms, because a lot of your art, you share it you share it on social media, and it gets widely, massively, it becomes viral, to use that term. How do you understand the social media platform? On the one hand, it does seem as a site of dissent, as a site of dialogue, but on the other hand, your own artworks are censored and taken down. You know, your Punjaban poster, for instance. How do you understand this space within these contradictions?
It's a double-edged sword. Just as it is tremendously powerful at one level, mm, which can help towards a positive change. At the same time, it is tremendously destructive, in some respects. Within the realm of politics, uh, it becomes a ground for all of this exchange, and a lot of which is actually fruitless, because it all comes down to just people supposedly having discussions, but actually either abusing each other or becoming more hardened about their own particular position. But of course, it is a platform, and where people can put out their views and people can share ideas. So the positives are there, but the negatives are equally strong. In a broader sense, I was talking about the other day with my daughter about depression in young people. I was saying that, I'm followed by a lot of young people, and uh, I am in touch with many, many more people, many more young people now with social media than I would have been in contact with earlier. And so I was talking to her about that. I say, there are a lot of people who are just talking about dealing with depression. And I think the social media itself is a site that produces that kind of depression. Because you're always sort of, it's always about this thing about, promoting yourself, placing yourself in projecting yourself, and looking at each other all the time, and it's kind of unhealthy. And young people don't have necessarily the experience or the resources to sift the wheat from the chaff. It all seems like, wow, I mean, I'm a loser. Look at all these other people. While it is that, it was interesting. My daughter pointed out that it's also a space where more people can express the fact that they are depressed. That earlier it was like a taboo. I mean, within your friend circle, your family, you don't want to say I'm depressed or whatever. It becomes a problem, and but actually it creates it is a problem. And at the same time, there is also a equally powerful aspect to it, which is a way to deal with that. I mean, a way to be able to share that. You can share or talk about depression with 100 people, which you can't say with your mother or father or brother. And you'll get, hopefully, if you have that kind of friends circle or community, you'll get positive, supportive responses in different ways, which can help you kind of deal with that. And similarly with politics or with ideology, kind of, left, right, center, whatever. And I know that my work, a lot of people look forward to it, and it gives them a sense of solidarity and support, that there are people out there talking about this, and that I'm part of this force or this conversation, this community. And that's important. It's important that we create those.
You did speak about being against authority per se, which could be right or left or whatever, but there is a cultural dialogue, and artists are speaking up and saying that this kind of cultural attack has not happened so far, the kind that we have had with the right-wing party in power. So there is an undeniable reality to it. Given that context, then why do you attest to the claim that the idea of India is under threat per se, which is what the artists are saying, and then how important are 2019 elections?
Yeah, of course, the idea of India is under threat now more than ever. And it's only a kind of theoretical debate about whether it's a degree of change or it's a quantum shift. It doesn't matter. The fact is that it is a crisis. But I do want to say that we have to fight with all our might, and we have to try in whatever way we can to not return the fascist government to power. However, even if that happens, and I'm not writing off anything or anyone. I've seen things in my own life where people have thrown out governments that seem to be completely entrenched. I hope that happens this time. However, there is a lot of people who are so focused on this 2019, and I'm not denying the importance of that. And I feel that we have to gather our forces, and I'm happy to see that there are many communities doing that, and like Artists Unite, and the people are coming together to kind of raise a. But it's not like, okay, now we've thrown out the BJP, chill, we are happy, things are fine. It's not. Even if the government is thrown out, the first of all, the one thing that you have to say in a perverse way that this government has done is it's made people aware of this endemic systemic injustice that exists in this country. About caste, about anti-Muslim. I mean, BJP has capitalized on the anti-Muslim thing, but that doesn't mean it didn't exist before. It was very much there, and it's just that in some strange, perverse way, BJP has made us all more aware of it, and brought it up into the kind of for us, made it visible for us all to see. So I think the struggle against the right-wing forces in this country doesn't end with throwing the BJP out. But I think that things are going to get much worse if this party comes back to power. And we have to be prepared to up our fight, basically, in the years to come. This is, and I'm saying this specifically to people who think that our fight extends till 2019. That once if we have thrown that government out, then we can go back to being what we were. But there is, first of all, what we were was already deeply problematic. And in any case, we cannot return to that even, because the whole kind of, it's not just the party on top, but it's kind of across the levels, there's been a paradigm shift. And that's also not only to do with the BJP, but with what's going on in the entire world. And so we better be prepared to keep fighting. I mean, this is not getting over anytime soon, either which way,
Thank you so much for speaking to us. If you liked the interview, please share it and subscribe to ICF for more such engaging conversations.